Star Trek 57, M23, take 2.
Star Trek podcast.
In approximately 6 months, I will apparently expose Kes to some type of biotemporal field in a highly experimental but nonetheless brilliant attempt to stop her aging process.
And it's this attempt which leads to Kes's current predicament.
What I will apparently fail to realize is that the biotemporal field is going to reactivate the dormant chronoton particles in her cells, bringing Kes out of temporal sync with the rest of us.
Is there any way to stop Kes from continuing these jumps?
Yes, purge her completely of the chronoton poisoning.
To do that, we'd need to know the precise temporal variance of the specific torpedo which contaminated the ship.
Tactical sensors were not functioning at the time. There is no data regarding the torpedo in question.
Let me get one thing straight, Doc. Is it possible, if this keeps happening to Kes, that she might actually jump back into a time before she knew any of us?
Worse than that, Mr. Paris. It's possible she may eventually jump back to a time before she even existed.
Alrighty, that'll, I think, about do it.
Okay, we're done.
If you wanna get in contact with us in contact with us, is that the phrase? You can contact us at feedback@itsgotstartrek.com.
What's happening?
Twitter @itsgotstartrek, all the social media, Mastodon and your Instagrams.
Is there some kind of post magic that's going to happen here?
No, this is the end of the podcast.
Oh, okay, right.
Where we've concluded we've had an excellent conversation up to this point, haven't we?
Yeah, I guess.
And then now we tell them all the social media and say goodbye, and that we'll talk to them next week, and that the algorithm will pick the episode for next week.
Yeah, okay. That seems to be what is happening.
Who
right?
are you people?
Okay, you guys watched the episode, right? This the whole gag here.
Yeah,
you know,
right.
You start at the end.
Oh my gosh, that's wow.
Yeah, I didn't think it would be that complicated.
I thought this was some new serious like way of managing.
I was hoping that he would keep jumping around in time, and that we would have to play along with
I thought this was some new approach to like the podcast he was taking, because that's what sometimes podcasters do, is they'll give like the conclusion after they run. Like Conan O'Brien's podcast does that. He'll like he'll be like
but we haven't even done the podcast.
Wait a second. I'm really fascinated by what Dan's example is going to be.
Well, because Conan will say like, oh, and today we're going to interview Moogie Badooby, like, or
Moogie
something. Moogie Badooby. And like he'll say like, oh, Moogie Badooby, we're going to interview that person today. It's going to be so great. We think you're going to love it. We're going to interview that person, and boy, I can't wait till we interview that person. But it turns out they already interviewed that person.
So it's all a lie. Podcasting's a lie, is what you're telling us.
Yeah, and he recorded that part after it and put it at the beginning.
It's an illusion.
It's a constructed reality.
Yeah.
Intended to trick
That's
people
even better.
into being entertained and passing time.
You're not really entertained.
Are we doing that too? You know what? I think we're not, because we lack the entertaining aspect. We lack the informative aspect. So I don't think we're on the wrong side of history here.
So do you think we could do that? Do you think we could like improv a whole backwards thing?
Oh no, absolutely not.
No, I didn't expect it to last.
No,
but I figured we'd do a couple of time jumps.
It's just kind of funny.
That was funny. I didn't get it at first.
I mean, it wasn't
confused.
that funny.
No, it was
more funny that you didn't get it.
Yeah,
because you looked honestly quite perplexed and upset.
Yeah,
it's like, oh, Patrick's springing another ridiculous thing on us
doing a
this
thing.
week. He's doing a thing. God damn it! All right, okay. So let's rewind. Go back into the embryo state and grow back out.
Weird. Why did time reverse? Like suddenly time went backwards.
Because they fixed it.
We'll get to all that.
The time went smoothly when they got back to the cell state. Suddenly time was smoothly going backwards instead of jumping back. It went from 4 to 3 to 1 cell.
Because they had fixed it.
Instead of jumping from 4 and going shoo shoo shoo, and then they're back at 2.
Maybe it's got something to do with the ratio of your cells. Regardless, we got to get the the front matter out of the way.
Front matter.
So, step 1, this is the It's Got Star Trek podcast. Step 2, we welcome the audience to the It's Got Star Trek podcast. Step 3, this is episode 160 of the It's Got Star Trek podcast. Step 4, we are discussing Star Trek Voyager's Season 3, Episode 21.
21.
Before and after.
Antes y después.
Is that Espanol?
I think so. Antes y después.
I don't know Spanish.
That means before and after.
All right. Well, before and after. Now,
boy.
when you look it up on the old internet, this is listed as one of the
I use the new internet.
one of the a lot of people's favorite episodes of Star Trek Voyager.
Really?
Oh, there's something that felt kind of hollow.
I was gonna say I was a little confused by that.
Yeah, it felt like it was an interesting idea, but it just even Robert Picardo, who's a great actor, even his performance seemed like kind of flat, and it wasn't his fault because he's a great actor.
There were some silly lines.
He's a great actor, but like it just like some of the lines just came off flat for some reason.
A lot of the people's lines were like that. They're bad lines.
I found it a little difficult to engage in this episode.
It's almost like the Kess character wrote the lines.
I thought the latter half of it was a little bit more interesting, and overall the sci-fi part was interesting. But
this was a Brandon Braga episode, I think.
No, it was Kenneth Biller.
Well, I saw Brandon Braga's name pasted to it somewhere.
Well, directed by
He's always
Alan
in there
Croker.
somewhere.
I think Kenneth Biller, and it was definitely Kenneth Biller wrote this.
I saw the name Maybe he was just
well,
producer.
he's the producer. He's the
producer.
executive. He got his hands in everything and covered in cocaine, by all accounts. Although I don't, allegedly.
Oh, was he a cocaine man?
Well, I think wasn't he the one? This is how rumors get started. I think he was the one who had just balls of cocaine at his house hanging out.
Okay, so I guess he had his balls full of cocaine at his house.
Bowls of cocaine.
Oh, okay. So he was a producer of a lot of Voyager episodes. So fine.
Well,
so he had nothing really.
He's one of the main Voyager.
It's so funny though. The term producer for like TV and movies is so different than for music. For music, a producer shapes so much of the sound. For movies and TV, it just means they provided the money, basically.
No. I disagree.
I'm sure they have some creative input, but the only reason they have creative input is because they put a lot of money in.
Where
it.
I disagree, because the show creators are executive producers, and that's like what Brandon Braga is, right? He has a lot of control over the show. He's right below Rick Berman.
I think executive producers aren't quite rated as high as producers. I think it's like producers then executive producers.
No, executive. Well, okay, that's a long, complicated thing because in Hollywood, there's actual meanings to the words, but then they're applied to a million people in the wrong way anyway. So there's no way to tell. You can be an executive producer and be bullshit, or you can be the most important person on the fucking show. You can be the Dan Harmon.
I just remember
you can be the Fat Albert. Did he produce that show?
Yes, I just remember something. Executive producer sounds like it's more important, but it's not usually as important as producer.
Okay, so yes, but before and after, and that's the episode we'll be discussing today.
Did you say before?
Do we have any new algorithm news? The algorithm, Dan's patented multiphasic algorithm.
Multiphasic.
It is multiphasic because it has multiple steps, multiple phases, and that's the reason we're watching this, because it spit out at some point, eventually spit out before and after.
Yeah, I was doing a lot of testing this week and trying to mess with the formula because it was kind of getting a lot of repeats again.
It did something weird this week, though.
Well, okay.
Even weirder than it did before.
Okay, well, that was with one of the modifications. So what happened is this week on my original formula, my original recipe formula, it spit out the episodes, but
the OG algorithm.
But there were a lot of repeats. For example, we keep getting past tense in there for some reason. A lot of DS9.
It is a great 2-part episode.
And it's a lot of DS9 heavy stuff. And I was like, why do we keep getting these? We'll get new ones.
I think your algorithm is pretty fucking brilliant since it's constantly suggesting Deep Space Nine. It just doesn't. It doesn't understand that we're going for something a little different than watching the best Star Trek that we could watch at a given time. Because that answer is almost universally going to be a Deep Space Nine episode.
Right. Yeah. So that is good in that sense.
If you included all past episodes of the podcast, it would be suggesting things like fried green tomatoes.
I still want to do fried green tomatoes.
episodes of the Orville. And
It would say fried green tomatoes because Patrick does talk about fried green tomatoes.
Only
a lot.
occasionally, and I said we could resolve it all by doing a podcast on fried green tomatoes, and it would be titled like Fried Green Tomatoes, the food, the book, and the film. And we would review all three, and we'd be cooking up fried green tomatoes
Well,
like
there's already
while
a- there's
and
already-
eating
That's
them
the part I'm.
while
the-
discussing the film and the movie.
There's already a joke about that in The Simpsons, though.
Yeah.
They mention like, what's your favorite book, movie, and food, and she's
Yeah.
like fried green.
All right,
tomatoes.
call it an homage to that Simpsons joke then.
Okay, I'll call it that. That's
We
what
can
I'll call
all
it from
speak
here on
in
out.
offensive characters of South Asian accents.
We just have to read the. That's a reference to Apu, just to clarify to the audience.
And actually, that line was given by his wife, Manjula.
Right. Yeah, but I believe he asked the question.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
the
algorithm.
So the algorithm
watch
was-
2023
so-
post Thanksgiving
so the-
2022.
so the
actually.
top
Let's
10
not get ahead of ourselves, Patrick.
So the
It's
top-
still 2022.
So the top 10, it's been giving a lot of repeats, but there's always a couple new ones in there. So I was like trying to make it more varied, see if there's a way I can spice it up, make it a little bit more varied so there's not so many repeats. So I
Add some digital pepper.
So I modified the algorithm to some other theories I had in mind from previously, but I went with the original one because I thought it would be the best, and I was right because
I like that you always refer very vaguely to these theories of how this algorithm's supposed to work, which again, audience, Jesse and I remain ignorant of the core bits and pieces of the algorithm.
Right. So I had about
It's proprietary to Dan, not even to the podcast.
I had about three. Well, they're all closely related. Basically, they're just variances, permutations, and I had 3 permutations. And I went with the one that I went with originally turned out to be the best one because the other 2 that I tried to do those, what it returned was all 2-parters.
Yes.
That's what it would return.
and we're still unclear as to why it did that.
Yeah, so it does return a list of all the episodes ranked of all Star Trek, but the top ones were all 2-parters, and I'm thinking it has something to do with the fact that the 2-parters are longer, they have a wider selection of words, and somehow those other variants were favoring wider selections of words. Now, my original recipe...
You got to divide by something.
My original recipe formula was not... Yeah, so my original recipe... Yeah, exactly. You had to
Gotta
divide by
divide.
something. And I was dividing in the other ones, but it
By
wasn't...
what? Couldn't tell you.
It wasn't the right thing because my original recipe formula was the best out of those 3 to begin with because that one does not return all 2-parters. It made the proper division. But the problem is we get a lot of repeats and I'm still trying to figure out ways. I'm thinking about weighting it differently, saying like if a word gets repeated between 3 and 15 times, it gets the most weight. That's what my new thing I'm going to try.
Well, what about, is it also feasible to perhaps further modify it such that if we can just decide ahead of time, we can narrow it down to 1 or more shows?
yeah, we can do that for sure.
And then only get options from those shows.
We can do that
So,
easily.
Ooh, that
for
sounds
example,
good.
next week, if we're looking at our tally, if we're being fair about this, we probably should do an Enterprise episode next week.
Okay, it's easy. I can totally do that to the max.
It's kind of Enterprise and Deep Space Nine are sort of tied right now, but we've done a Deep Space Nine recently with Honor Among Thieves, so maybe Enterprise. So that's something to look forward to next week. Probably Enterprise.
Yeah.
But we don't know what the algorithm will spit out yet, and we'll let you know on our social media, which was previously mentioned. Just rewind the podcast to learn what our social media handles are.
Another thing I want to get out of the way is that I'm disappointed with Paramount Plus's quality of some of the Star Trek shows it has. Some of it,
You just mean you're just
I'm
like,
sorry.
I wish they should have gone back in time and hired better writers.
I meant on a technical
Shades of Grey, what the fuck is that?
on a technical level. Deep Space. I was gonna say DS. I was gonna say.
Deep Space Nine.
I was gonna say DS9.
Oh, welcome to Deep Space Nine.
I was gonna say DS9, and then I mixed that with Deep Space Nine. I got Deep Space Nine. Deep Space Nine, there's some weird, like the copy they used, like it was a poor copy, and Patrick, you can attest to this. You
I can
noticed
attest to it.
that, like on the Paramount Plus, it was doing some weird gobblies when it switched,
yeah,
and Voyager had the same thing to the
Voyager
point.
does a lot.
Like a
and to the
noir
point-
pattern type business.
Yeah, and to the point where when they were on the Year of Hell part in the dark ship, like it was really dark on the screen, and it would like flash white with these like gobbledygooks every once in a while. So, like, this is your fucking flagship franchise on your channel, and you can't be bothered to like get proper copies of like
Proper copies.
Now,
Because if you look at like the DVD copies, they're much better.
Yeah, right.
They don't got the garbles and the goobles.
yeah, now it doesn't do that for all of the series, but I know Deep Space Nine and Voyager so far are the
For
ones
some
that I've
reason,
noticed.
though, it's like seems to be only those.
Yeah, and that's like,
Well, it's
dude,
because you have the HD versions of TOS and TNG, which were upscaled, not upscaled, but you rescan for the negatives. And then Enterprise and onward, those are all
Yeah.
HD natively.
yeah.
Right? So that's probably the issue there. It's the SD
Native
versions
use
that they're
nuts.
stuck with.
Also, their closed captioning could use work. There were no apostrophes in this episode.
Not a single one?
I couldn't see any apostrophes anywhere.
Ho.
So that could use some work as well.
All right, well, we'll bundle that up along with our other notes for Paramount Plus.
Are there really a lot of apostrophes in Starfleet, though? I mean, come on.
I don't know how to answer
I
that
really
question.
don't. I also do not know. I
Are
don't
there
know how to sort of
apostrophes in
interpret that question.
Is that some kind of like speciesist thing? Like there's like we don't take apostrophes around here in Starfleet. I thought this is where you accepted apostrophes the most, man, was in Starfleet. Starfleet and the Federation is where apostrophes can feel welcome. What about tildes? Fuck those things.
What things?
He means like the tilde.
Tilde.
The little wavy thing. All right. Well, anyway,
We don't like your kind around here, you fucking tilde.
that's the algorithm
You fucking
update.
tilde.
Tilde.
That's the algorithm update that Dan is just
What you
joking
looking
around.
at, tilde?
We don't have anything against tildes or asterisks or apostrophes or the brackets.
I
and none of
myself
that.
prefer ampersands. Those are what I lean towards. Ampersands.
There may be a bias between backslash and forward slash, depending. That's an age thing.
That's a Windows Linux thing.
That's
Fucking
exactly.
Windows
It's a
has
Windows
to-
Linux age thing. You know.
Fuck Windows from having the wrong.
This is a
size
Unix
slash.
system. I know this.
I know
The
this.
ampersand is an and.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
and.
I'm a big Windows fan, but fuck their like view on like slashes for file.
What do they call
See,
the
I'm
at?
into the backslash.
What do they call
I got
the
no problem
at
with the
symbol?
backslash. Who cares? I mean, forward slash, backslash. I am agnostic.
The forward slash is better because it's easier to reach on the keyboard.
Okay, I don't fully buy that.
It is.
I buy
It's right
that,
there.
No, I buy that a little bit, but I think it depends on your finger
hate
morphology.
Nah, it's
I
right
would-
there.
It's a finger morphology thing because
The
I've never had a
backslash
problem with the
backslash is like way up here, and the forward slash
You are
is down here next to the
exaggerating.
shift.
Dan is currently hyper exaggerating.
Nah.
He is hyperbolically
He's got them stretchy
typing,
fingers.
wiggling his fingers around.
No, the four back.
And he's got piano playing
He's got
fingers
long
for
fingers,
those
man.
The,
who wanted to
the
know.
backslash, you have to change your hand position because it's next to the back, up below the backspace, but the forward
Dan
slash
is-
is
Dan
next to
is-
the shift. The shift is the one that's meant to be pressed all the time, and it's right next to it, which is what you want.
Dan is nearly throwing his right shoulder out in an effort to exaggerate how hard it is to enter a backslash. Something that he did for decades.
Well-
before it was an issue.
Well, Windows even knows how bullshit their backslashes are because they will accept forward slashes. They're like, yeah, we'll accept forward slashes because we
Okay.
know we're bullshit for. I like Windows. I'm a Windows
It's a fair-
fan.
it's a
I'm
It's
just
a fair point. Okay, so now that was software talk.
software
Windows is
talk.
okay. Let me just say.
Let me just
I'm
say,
okay with Windows.
my problem with Windows and Paramount Plus, man,
Yeah, all
I'm
right.
fans, but I got some issues. I just want you guys to be better because I love you.
All right.
I love you, man.
That's abusive talk right there.
Yeah, it is. I just don't want to see you get hurt, Deanna.
Yeah, I just, I mean, I'd stop hitting you if you stopped fucking up.
What about asterisks?
Stop. The more you cry, the less I care.
Fine with asterisks. Okay.
Asterisks are fine.
We don't want to have to put an asterisk on this episode, so let's talk about Star Trek Voyager season 3 episode 21 before and after. Starting from the beginning, the incredibly short little teaser opening. What'd you think?
Well, we find out
Doctor has hair.
his name is okay. Of
Everything's
all,
all weird and jarring. You're like, what's going on?
and
Tess has a child.
is now? Do we learn? Do we know at this point that his name is Dr. Van Gogh?
No. He's made that up in the course of this. In fact, they even make fun of it because at one point she's traveling back in time and he's like, Tom Paris is like, I thought you settled on Mozart because the Doctor is an arrogant piece of shit.
Yeah, right. So
I love him, but it is funny how like nakedly vain he is.
this and in this episode in particular, I don't remember him being like this in your face because he just couldn't get enough of his own like sort of like his bio temporal chamber.
He's often,
Yeah,
like
he often is, but he seemed like really
like
in
when
your
he in
face.
Tinker Tenor Dr. Spy, he gives that whole he has that dream where he has that whole sequence where he's singing an opera while saving Tuvok from a Ponvar attack.
Right. This one, he's just blatantly telling everyone how smart he is, though. But calling yourself naming yourself after a famous artist, that's like a Data thing to do, because Data, and it's innocent coming from Data, because it's Data. He's like, oh, Data's trying to figure out how to be human. He doesn't realize how awkward this is. But the Doctor is based on a fucking human. What human is going to be like, I should be called Dr. Mozart?
The human's even more of an asshole, Dr. Zimmerman. But in a more practical and banal fashion.
Right. It just seems like what human would, at least you'd think they'd have enough tact to be like, yeah, it's a little over the top, thinking I can name myself. And as a doctor, would you really want to be named after an impressionist painter, Van Gogh? Wouldn't you want him to be like a realist painter or something? You don't want your doctor, you don't want like Dr. Picasso or something like that.
Dr. Francis Bacon.
You're taking an extremely utilitarian position here, which is fine.
But why Van Gogh?
I think I disagree. I don't see the
Van
problem.
Gogh? Well, why Van Gogh?
What about Monet?
Jackson
Would
Pollock.
Monet be a problem?
I don't know.
What about Manet?
Manet is a realist painter, isn't it? Manet.
Well, that's what I'm saying. There's Monet, and then you got Manet.
Then you got mayonnaise.
Yeah. What about
no, my point, man, like a
Rembrandt?
Look, if
Renoir.
Why would you want some kind of abstract painter's name if you're a doctor? Doctors deal in reality. Okay? I don't want my surgeon to be having some flight of fancy as he's trying to take out my spleen.
These are the things I look for.
That's a classic Larry King. These are the things I look for in the young MD. Yes. So,
anyways,
I think you're making a weak point, but very, very well.
I think I'm making a weak point.
I think it's a weak point.
No, because Dr. Van Gogh, seriously, Dr. Van Gogh, it's
thin
terrible.
point.
Come on,
Thin and weak is not fair.
What is weak? What is weak about this?
Fair.
What is weak about wanting to be Dr. Van Gogh?
I don't agree with the connection between you're a doctor and thus you have to be inspired or want to be associated with something very practical. Like
I'm not
painting.
saying like strictly that, but I would say, would say that you don't want to be associated with, like I said, say Picasso. You wouldn't want a Dr. Picasso like taking your heart out and putting it back in.
I mean,
Dr. Salvador Dali.
You would not want a plastic surgeon named Dr. Picasso. I will tell you that. I will tell.
That is a fair
giant
point.
slore.
That is a fair point, but I would argue that what this has revealed is that it is sort of contextual. This is a contextual situation, and it depends on the particulars. Yeah. I personally am not that offended by Van Gogh wanting to be associated with Van Gogh. However, yes, I do see your point. If he was named Picasso or Dr. Giggles or something like, yes, maybe we don't want him associated with that.
Then during the third reconciliation of the last of the McKettrick supplicants, they chose a new form for him, that of a giant slore. Many Shuvs and Zuls knew what was to be roasted in the depths of the slore that day, I can tell you.
Yeah, that has the ring of familiarity, but is not making a connection in my aged mind.
That is Ghostbusters. Lewis, whatever. Lewis.
The Keymaster?
Yeah, the dick holder. The dick holder. Lewis. What's that guy's name? What's the actor's name?
You mean Rick Moranis?
Yeah, Louis Moranis.
Yeah, but his name is
Louis Moranis.
His name was like Louis Tubman or something.
Tuttle or something?
Louis
no,
Tuttle?
Tuttle, not Tuttle.
Turtle? No, Louis Tuttle is a different.
No, that's from like that other show.
That was a segment of we fumble about trying to remember shit that we should remember, but we can't.
Louis Tully.
Louis Tully.
Okay, fine. So
close.
Louis too.
Back at the ranch.
Continue the diatribe.
So Kes is in the doctor's. Kes is in the doctor's office. We find out she has a daughter,
and she's a grandma. Grandma Kes. Hey, Grandma Kes.
The doctor has hair for some reason, like Jesse pointed out.
The doctor has hair, which freaked me out for the bulk of the episode, and partly may explain the distraction I had, the lack of engagement I had in the first half of this episode.
They just did that as sort of like, I think they just did that as a marker, a time marker. Yeah, just to be like, oh, well, now we're before hair, and then we must be in this point of the time.
Yeah.
So right.
Before hair.
Before hair.
Yeah,
So yeah, that first phase, yeah, they like woke up and they were in a biotemporal thing.
Biotemporal bed.
And then she got cold, and
the coffin-like chamber.
There were 14 phases overall. I counted.
Oh, you've assigned phases?
Yeah. There was the first one was her. I guess her end of life.
Like phasing through time or phases of life or something.
Well, the amount of time she zapped around, and they were all happened to be like important points in her life for some reason. One was the end of life.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2 was she was about to be put in the biotemporal chamber, I believe. The third was the onset of morologium, which was at 98% memory engram loss.
Mm-hmm.
On her 9th birthday, the symptoms of morologium, which strangely enough the symptoms happen at 95% loss, which is a lot of loss. And it's not until 98% that you have the onset of morologium. So at 94%, that's apparently not symptomatic of, anyways, 95%, memory engram loss is symptoms of morologium. I thought that was just like a high number. It should have been more like 20%.
Which phase is this?
That's phase 4. Phase 5 is she held Andrew, her grandson, as a baby. Number 6, she was giving birth to Linus in the middle of birthing Linus. That'd be a terrible time to wake up in, wouldn't it? In the middle of some of that shit.
It was sort of like a gag.
Yeah, it was kind of a gag.
It was like a sci-fi sitcom.
And those
gag.
people give birth out of their backs?
As some sort of sack.
There's a baby chute?
It was unclear what was going on.
I didn't really want to find
reference
out,
to sack.
Yeah.
Some sort of sack bursting open.
And
the sack is burst open.
It sounded like when she was giving birth, it sounded like I was like running a fork through some cheesy sauce pasta or something.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it was all going.
I wish you hadn't said that.
That's what it sounded like.
Real birth is much grosser than that.
Yeah, I wouldn't know. Does it sound gross?
It doesn't sound good.
I feel like we were borderline being offensive right now. I was saying like, beautiful. The miracle of life is gross. It grosses me out. They should really do something about that.
No. Folks who have gone through the quote unquote miracle of life, I think are fully cognizant of how gross it is.
Miracles can be gross.
And gross can be beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful in its own grotesque, slimy, disgusting, wretched fashion.
But listen to that.
Things happen.
But listen to that scene. It sounds like, you know, like when you have that fresh pasta with the melted sauce and cheese, and it's like,
Okay.
And the baby was covered with what looked like
Yeah, that baby had some goo on
it had some kind of Jello or some kind of boba on it or something.
Okay, so you were right. We don't want to interrupt one of your classic Dan counts, like labels things with numbers situations. We haven't had one of these in a while, so I'm all excited. And we've stopped right like halfway through.
All right.
To dwell on this.
Okay.
You know, your rather evocative description of this birth.
Yeah.
The birth of Linus.
Okay,
So just to remind us, what phase number are we at?
Phase 6.
Phase 6 of 14 that you've identified.
Yes. Phase 7 was the beginning of the year of hell.
Okay.
Phase 8 was some random time. It was just some random shit.
It was some bullshit.
It was some bullshit where so she was just like, "Doctor, this is the number," and he's like, "What?" And then there's like, "Oh no!"
But she still had different hair the whole time.
Yeah, her hair kept changing.
But it was like hair she never had.
Yeah, because it was the future hair.
It was future hair.
It was still
future
future
hair.
hair. Yeah.
Yeah, you know.
Future hair.
And by the way, okay, well, let's get through this list
I'm
first.
sorry,
No, I actually have something.
I am tangent man.
No, you reminded me of something though, so no, it's good. So 9, they just arrived on the ship, Kes and Neelix.
Mm-hmm. Space creep.
Yeah, space creep. What do you think about that
He's
term?
a space creep.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah. So that's when they first arrived on the ship, and then she was all like, "Oh, something crazy's happening." Janeway's like, "Hold on, Neelix, what's going on, Kes?"
And what's awesome about that is Janeway does not know who these people are.
Yeah, right.
But she's an awesome science person.
Yeah.
And she's like, "Oh, I want to hear this person out." Because
right.
Janeway kicks ass.
And Neelix,
unlike Neelix, he was a piece of shit.
He was trying to minimize her
He was like, "Oh, she's having a case of the crazy."
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Basically.
And Janeway's like, wait, shut up, Neelix.
the young woman is just, her brain is just, doing that young woman brain thing.
So then number 10, she's a kid with her dad, and her dad's like, "Oh, you're so creative, I love you, but you're being silly." And then number 11, that was Kes's birth. And then we start getting weird when number 12, when we see a weird Kes fetus. Number 13 is like the 4-cell organism, at which point it does a strange thing where time is no longer moving forward. Now time is smoothly going backwards. You notice each time they phase back to a spot, but it's moving forward in time. They jump back, move forward, jump back, move forward.
Jump back, move forward, jump back, move forward.
Yeah, and so this time what they did is they jumped back and moved back because it went from 4 cells to like 2 cells to 1 cell, and then it went back to 0 cells, and which was like before life began, and that was like actually kind of neat to think about. It's like, whoa, that's really existential and crazy. And then it flashed, but then it flashed back forward to Kessa's birth, and then it just kind of like she woke up or something. So I guess we're to believe she didn't relive her whole life again.
Yeah, I mean, yes and no. I think both are true.
Yeah.
Right? It's basically everything gets back to normal after that. All right, so that was phase 14. Those are the 14 phases.
Those are the 14 phases.
Those are good phases. How about this? Let's take a break, and when we get back, we will continue discussing Star Trek Voyager Season 3, Episode 21, before and after.
Before the break. And
Does that sound good?
After the break.
All right, we'll be right back.
Marionettes of the Ages.
Jesse, we're back.
We're back.
I'm gonna leave that in the podcast. Okay.
You should do that.
I made it up.
Okay, all right. The teaser, and we talked about a little bit of the first act. Dr. Van Gogh, of course, very arrogant. Captain Chakotay. Captain Chakotay.
Yeah, what the hell, man?
Man, he laid his hands on that kid. Did you notice that part where Andrew was running off and Chakotay grabbed him by the arm?
I mean, but I didn't really catch. I didn't think about that. You're right.
That was
did
something.
kinda grab him.
He did. That's something that an angry abuser type
Some
does.
kind of
is
Maquis pirate, man.
When a kid's running away and you grab the kid by the arm and force them to turn back around, like you need to keep your eyes on people like
It's
that.
bad news. Yeah.
So Chakotay,
I didn't catch that.
That's red flag shit.
That upsets me.
because here it is. It goes and it says Chakotay enters as Andrew runs out. Chakotay, whoa, whoa, whoa! What's the big hurry? And Andrew's like, I'm sorry, Captain. I have to go. And he's
Yeah.
like, what the fuck was that all about? You know.
Yeah, it's
I may
why
have-
is he?
I may have dramatized it
That's
a
not
little
his kid, so what the hell does he care?
Yeah, you shouldn't be touching other people's kids.
Yeah, for real, dude.
Man. Anyways, but I know Chakotay means only well.
Captain Chakotay.
He just needs to remember that kids, he doesn't have command on it. Would he lay his hands on his first officer like that? No.
He might. I don't know.
Tuvok should be the kid.
Tuvok.
Come on.
Tuvok said sensors.
Yes, he did. He often does. All right, so this episode, part of the fun of this episode, because it is fun. I mean, it's not. I don't place it as one of my favorite Voyager episodes, but it is cool. The sci-fi concept is cool.
Yeah, it's a wacky
The
idea.
execution just felt a little
I agree.
plastic.
I think it's it's a little something a little not quite
a little
excellent
two-dimensional, hollow.
Some
something.
lame line.
And honestly, some of that might be retroactive when you know that Kes leaves shortly after this, beginning of the fourth season.
it does make this episode weird. Yeah.
And so that adds a little, it's cool that they had this pretty awesome story for her at the end. She was often somewhat underused character, I'd say. It was one
Pretty
of the
much.
issues.
I think that same actor was in the movie. I think she was in American History X, and I think she was also in the movie SLC Punk.
I believe you are correct on
correct, sir.
Yeah.
on both counts. But this episode, part of the fun is this running backwards kind of deal, which is neat. And I like that the audience has to sort of figure out what's going on as it's going along. I think another issue that I have with this particular episode is I like that structure. I like that they're like, oh, the audience is like going along for the ride. The problem is we know from watching Star Trek, we know what's kind of happening at the beginning.
Yeah, right.
It's like, oh, it's going backwards. That's clever. Here's
Yeah.
what's going to happen. And you can make a pretty good guess about some technobabble, and the doctor's going to try to help. And then, everyone's going to try to team up periodically. And she's got to transfer information across time zone lands
totally.
in her memory. And
Which is
That's
interesting.
a big Star Trek thing.
Right. It's interesting, and I guess this is kind of nitpicky, and it's beside the point of the Deus ex machina of the story. But what is like, Kes can remember her previous happenings as she's traveling back through time. She
but
remembers.
she can't remember her past.
She can't remember her past. I'm okay with that. But even
Just
though
her recent past.
even though it's like kind of like
She can make new engrams.
even though it's kind of weird how she got to that point in the first place.
And only her mind is traveling in the past because she's always in the appropriate body for that time period.
We don't really know how she got to that point.
Her awareness
Is that why she has the same
bouncing-
hair the whole time?
Bouncing back and forth.
Her awareness, like, kind of, something about her awareness got erased, and we don't know at what point she got, like, to that point in the future. But anyways, whatever. But when she's going back in time, wouldn't, like, the Starfleet crew, like, at the end of her life, wouldn't they be like, yeah, you've been doing this weird jumpy thing around all this time? You know what I'm saying? Like, she's been traveling back as they've been traveling forward. She has memories of her past interactions with them, but they don't have memories of their quote-unquote past interactions with her.
Well, with the caveat that when it comes to any sort of time travel, it automatically is silly and doesn't make any sense.
Right. That's why I was saying it's, like, kind of like...
Were we to take it somewhat seriously and try to analyze it, I think the argument is somewhat explained. I mean, I think the answer is somewhat provided in the conversation they have towards the end of the episode, where they say that she was probably affecting time in one way or the other, but also, like, now that they've fixed her, that future is probably not going to happen.
Right.
So it's not like that stuff is actually, it's complicated. It's complicated to think about because, again, it's not real and doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. And it's like, and the whole thing didn't start until she got that biotemporal thing. Supposedly she'd already lived her full life. And so she got put in the biotemporal chamber, which, like, the whole idea of that was to make your cells younger, to keep you from dying. It seems like you'd be able to do that indefinitely, but I'm sure there was some kind of whatever, doesn't matter why it doesn't let you do that. But it's weird that she had lost all her memories up to that point, but it's like one of those things. It's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Harry Kim marries her daughter.
Yes.
Yeah, that was creepy, which means supposedly he helped raise that daughter, right?
That I find totally creepy. So, like, what they do is, like, we always refer to Neelix being a space creep because of Kes being, like, 2 years old.
Yeah.
And it's an alien race that lives
That's an unexpected move
9 years
for,
old. But, like, honestly, just from a real world perspective, it feels weird.
I could see Tom Paris doing it, but...
Well, so the thing is, I part of it, I didn't buy the relationship between Tom Paris and Kes. I think that's another thing that undermined the episode just a little. The chemistry wasn't there.
Yeah.
And from a character perspective, it didn't somehow make sense.
When he was just like, I
seemed
thought
forced.
the wedding would be the best day of my life, but I was wrong. Every day since has been better than last. And I'm not saying
That's
that...
the point. Literally, that line is the point where I wrote down the note, I don't buy this relationship.
Exactly, right. It just... Now, maybe that line could work for other relationships, but coming out of Tom Paris's mouth for Kes, there was nothing that made sense
I think Tom Paris
about
and B'Elanna, I could buy that.
Yeah.
That relationship always made sense just from a personality and character perspective.
And so we're to believe, but also but I guess now we know that Paris had a crush on Kes. I mean, that probably didn't change. Like, even though the future's different
maybe, but
now,
she's stating that now. I don't know if that was ever really, like, on-screen canonical, but even if it were,
there
like,
was some little bits here and there. Like
the thing is
hints.
Neelix is already creepy, and now Paris is made creepy, and now Harry Kim is arguably, like,
out of nowhere.
creepier
Just
than
creepy
all of
out
them.
nowhere.
Because I know what the problem is, that they're not they created this character of Kes and this group of people who live about 9 years. And that, as a sci-fi concept, is pretty fascinating. Mm-hmm. But Voyager did not really play around with it enough, in my opinion. I think that they did these very light stories related to that. And like this story, the fact that she lives to 9 years old really has nothing to do with the story. You could do the same plot line with any other character. Right. The shorter lifespan does compress it a little and gives an ostensible excuse for why the Doctor was playing around with temporal doodads and who has and causing this problem in the first place. But to me, that doesn't necessarily justify it. They're not interrogating this idea that she is only 9 years old and grows fast. Mm-hmm. Harry Kim marrying her daughter is presented as almost a goofy joke.
Yeah, they're like, oh, and having you as my son-in-law, ha ha. It's like, dude,
it would be fascinating.
You saw Linus being born born, you
Yeah.
probably helped raise her, and like you pulled like a Woody Allen thing on her or something. you know?
Yeah. No, I think that's a really good point that I hadn't even considered, Dan, because they are on this ship. So like her lifespan is going to be in close proximity with her dad's close friend.
There's not that many people on that ship.
Do you
It's
think-
like a
No.
small town?
Do you think Linus lives to be like 25 or 30 because she's half Ocampan? I don't
See,
know.
that's the thing is that they don't interrogate
Yeah.
that. They don't.
Yeah.
They like we never get to see any of that stuff. That like I would have been interested in that Harry, Tom, Kess dynamic in like a full episode, just
Yeah.
focusing on that and like whether or not that was awkward and what the moral discussion would be around that.
And it was also kind of, I couldn't help and
yeah, couldn't have helped.
I couldn't help.
I couldn't have helped.
Even though I know once again this was not the focus of the episode.
Once again.
I couldn't help but think about how Neelix should be at least a little bit like bitter. Like Kess was the love of his life.
Yes.
Yeah.
But like there's no
He's just popping
residue.
around in
he's
a
just
uniform.
like he's like, oh
Got a
hey Kels,
uniform.
how's it going, Kels? Hey Tom Paris, hey guys, yay, I'm Neelix, yay.
He does point out.
Yay!
He does point out that he has one of Kess's lungs. If I recall correctly, I
don't remember that part.
In season 1, I think the Vidians, those rat bastard Vidians harvesting organs all the time, I think they stole Neelix's lungs.
That's one of the gross face people.
Yeah, and I think Kess donated a lung
Gross
to him.
face killer.
I could have that wrong, but I don't think so.
But
I
She
think
only
that's
needs one lung.
So-
She's only going to live for 9 years.
I just yeah.
But he was all like, I'm glad to see that lung still working. It was during the birthday cake scene when she blows out the candles.
Oh,
He's like, I'm glad to see that lung is still rocking out
Right.
or whatever he said. Some variation on that.
So it's like little things like that that helped make the episode like just not believable. Things like they didn't even make Neelix seem remotely like they didn't have to focus
Yeah.
on it. They could have just made it seem, just give him one line to show that he's slightly, just something about the way he like his emotional state that makes him think he's slightly
one of those
better.
Voyager
you can.
things where the characters don't always act like they're supposed to.
yeah.
Well, because you can feel tension between Riker and Worf, like over
Yeah.
Troy and stuff like that.
Subtle.
and so. But it's like just because it's not the point of the episode doesn't mean it doesn't have to be there. And like, yeah, the Tom Paris and Kess thing was weird. By the way, they sang for "She's a Jolly Good Fellow" instead of "Happy Birthday." Is there some kind of licensing issue with
There
Happy
used to
Birthday?
be.
Used to be.
It is
But
since
there's
resolved.
not-
Until recently, yeah.
But for she is a jolly
No.
good fellow, that was
it was
never
unique
licensed.
to the Happy Birthday, and you can look up the story. Wikipedia should be
I
sufficient,
always heard
but
it was
there may
like some
be some
school teacher invented Happy Birthday and
long ago, and like the sisters or whatever that inherited the rights
There
to
were
it
some sisters.
aggressively sued people, like wouldn't let people in like schools and churches sing it and stuff. But recently, only in the past few years, a landmark court case voided their continued copyright of that particular.
Well, actually, it didn't. It didn't.
thing.
It didn't void. It voided the people that said that they had their rights to it. When it was a particular publisher and it turned out they only had the rights to a particular piano arrangement.
Yes.
Of Happy Birthday.
Yeah.
interesting.
It was
Yeah.
like chapel music.
So now you can sing Happy Birthday and not get in trouble. We could do it right now if we wanted, but it's none of our birthdays yet.
It's my 111th birthday.
Bilbo Baggins.
If you want him, come and claim him.
We love the Lord of the Rings, but we tend to focus on the Fellowship of the Ring in terms of our goofy side bits and bobs.
So the birthday cake thing we were talking about.
It was really blue.
So Andrew is making a gift he hasn't made yet. I can't remember. Do we ever see the gift?
I don't think so.
we
If we
never-
did, I didn't. My brain erased it.
Yeah, my brain-
I lost the engrams.
Yeah, I lost
that
the
encoded
engrams.
that gift, the information about that gift.
I forget. It was something. I forget.
It was something, but
forgettable.
Grandma, don't
Something
look.
forgettable.
yeah, the point.
Look at it, Grandma.
The whole point was just to give the time this whole episode was kind of like, remember last week you were saying, Patrick, about how Charlie X was giving little expositional droplets through the conversation, which was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
This whole episode was just kind of a continuous sort of conversational exposition. That's all. Try to tell you where you were in the story, which wasn't necessarily a bad thing.
No,
It's just-
that all worked very well for me.
Yeah.
I think this is a well-written episode. I'm leaning towards your view, Dan. Is really more about the execution, and I'm not going to lay the blame on anything. And it's not a horrible episode. I find this a totally enjoyable
not the
episode.
worst, no.
It just. I was a little shocked when I read that this is considered one of the best episodes of Voyager of all time.
I wouldn't say it was that.
Because I'm a big fan of Voyager, and we do see some of the key awesome things in Voyager in this episode. We see awesome Janeway being all kick-ass and awesome and intelligent and decisive and coming up with plans and supporting her crew and even supporting a nominal stranger in Kess in that one scene.
Although she was way interested in when Kess was like, we have information on the, what was the name of that alien species?
The Krenim.
The Krenim.
From Year of Hell.
So, and this was actually supported. This was made consistent by, at the end, Tuvok was like, when they were talking about like, we shouldn't know the future, that's like the whole purpose of a lot of time travel stories is like, you shouldn't know the future doesn't exist, or you shouldn't know it, or blah, blah, blah.
Doc Brown.
But, and so, right, exactly. And so and then Tuvok at the end was like, well, we should probably know about this Krenim stuff. And that was supported because Janeway actually said the first thing. Because when Kess goes up to Janeway, she's like, I got some shit about the Krenim you got to know. She's like, tell me now. I want to know. And my first thought was like, I thought like
But they don't know, do they?
I thought the time rules stated that you're not allowed to know the future about things. So I kind of actually dug that they're like, there's exceptions to this rule that you're not allowed to know the future.
You can do whatever you want.
You can do whatever you want.
In the end,
right.
you can do whatever you want.
Because once again, there's no rules to time stories because they're always a little silly somehow. So, but
precisely.
But she didn't pull the thing like, no, Kess, I can't know the future.
I quite enjoy your Catherine Janeway.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Impersonation.
So this was when the birthday thing. They had 95. She was at 95% memory engram loss. Paris was like, is that symptomatic of the morologium? And then doctor says, I don't know. I have no basis for...
I don't know, Jim.
I don't know, Jim. I have no basis for comparisogum. Then he says, no other Ocampans on board. But what about Andrew and Linus? Aren't they Ocampans? He says
half and 1/4.
Does he mean there's no full Ocampans on board?
This gets into a whole complicated discussion.
He says there's no other Ocampans on board.
Multiracial identity versus genetic contributions is complicated.
How old does Spock get to live?
Like 200 or something.
Does he live a full Vulcan life, or is he a half Vulcan?
They live a couple of centuries.
He was pretty old when we last saw Spock in Star Trek Into Darkness.
So I don't know. When they said there's no other incompetence on board, I thought I was
incompetence.
Ocompensations.
Incompetence.
This is when Paris suggested that she's experiencing events in reverse. Chakotay suggested a time paradox. And then, but the doctor said he suspected precognition, and this actually comes, this comes to play later in the episode. And I'm trying to find out where that was, and Scrolly.
You missed a Scrolly. It's scrolling your notes.
No.
Knock, knock. Who's there? Dan's notes.
Okay, So in phase 5, which you will remember is
of the 14.
Phase 5
phase 5
fifth out of the 14.
Phase 5 was the Andrew baby. There was Andrew baby in phase 5. So Paris is like, would you mind explaining what's going on, blah, blah, blah. And then the EMH, the doctor, he's going like, it's really quite obvious, Lieutenant.
Yes.
Prick doctor line.
I like that.
Says, your wife is traveling backward through time.
Yes.
Now, here's the thing. Paris came up with that earlier in the episode. Paris was like, in their future, Paris was like, it's almost as if they're experiencing events in reverse. And the doctor said, I think it's precognition. And now the doctor says, oh, it's obvious they're going back in time, you stupid fucking Paris. But the doctor was wrong before. But he's acting like he was right.
I can see that you're getting worked up about this.
But do you see what I'm saying?
I see it.
You see the hypocrisy?
No, Dan. I do think that's the joke.
Time travel.
I think that's a joke.
Yeah, I know. And I just didn't, I'm just saying.
You seem to think it wasn't a joke and you're mad at the doctor.
Well, that's the joke.
I think it was an intended joke to have the doctor arrogantly to Paris repeat his own idea back to him, but in the past.
Well, I'm saying it's not the joke of the doctor, it's the joke of the writers.
Yes.
So I am mad at the doctor. I'm not mad at the writers. I'm mad at the doctors.
All right.
But you're saying I should be laughing at the doctor instead.
I thought it was very mildly.
I thought it was humorous too, and so I'm just pointing it out.
Because again, I think the writers do a great job here.
But you think they did it on
weaving
purpose?
this plot through. I think all the components are all there for a brilliant episode. I don't think it quite reaches that in terms of the whatever. And who knows? Maybe it was my mood. Maybe my belly was too full of meats and turkeys and other stuff.
Well, I'm wondering if everyone picked up on that. I thought I was just
mashed potatoes and shit.
I just thought I was just really perceptive, and like nobody else in the world would pick up on something as perceptive as me because I'm so brilliant.
You can be perceptive and still like other people can also be very perceptive.
I don't know if that's true.
Or you may be
I'm not nearly as
exceedingly
perceptive as you
perspective,
are.
but your level
I'm perspective. I am perspective. I am perspective. I don't have perspective. I am perspective.
Specifically?
You can be very perceptive, but that like everyone's perceptive.
How am I supposed to be perceptive if everyone else is perceptive? Relatively speaking, that means I'm just normal.
No, you can still look. Okay, I know. Look, you can be perceptive.
If everybody is perceptive and I'm not perceptive, don't laugh at me. You said it first. You said perspective first.
No, I'm still going to laugh at you.
I'm still going to laugh at you.
I'm just going to erase my engrams of my previous misspeaking. And I'm going to retain the engrams.
If everyone is perceptive and I'm not perceptive, that makes me relatively lame.
This is demonstrating that you have a bias in not a negative bias. I don't mean that in a negative connotation.
Here's where Patrick tells me how I am.
No. This is a descriptive bias in favor of relative judgments, and you arrange things in relative geographic positions and
things are all relative. Space. There's no such thing as like an absolute.
No, things don't have to be relative in that. If everyone is at the same level of perception, capability of perception, 90% of people say that. I know that's not true, but just tossing it out there as an option. That doesn't make the value of your perception less in terms of how much you're able to perceive while watching a 1990s television program. It does mean you don't have relatively more access to that information those writers spent all that time hiding from their audience.
If everybody notices a line and one person in the world doesn't notice what that line is saying, people aren't going to be like, "Oh, it's okay." It's like no big deal. Everyone's going to laugh at that person.
No, I mean in a practical sense, yes.
So it's all relative in that sense.
I totally agree with you. In that specific scenario, the world is indeed a cruel place.
Yeah.
And I do think you're very perceptive. I do think you're quite perceptive.
God, I don't need your validation.
I think it kind of.
I don't know. I don't.
You want it a little bit.
No, I don't.
Not mine specifically.
Oh my God! Now you're telling me what I want.
I'm not telling you.
First he told me how I am. Now he's telling me what I want, and he's like, "It's okay, Dan. You're very perceptive."
I didn't use
you're
that tone.
You're so perceptive, Dan.
I
Dan,
you don't need my validation, but
Dan, I got a space on my lap for you.
You're giving
my space for perceptive people. My special perceptive.
You're giving off a perception, and the perception that you're giving off is that you don't mind having a little bit of validation. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with that. I like being validated.
I'm not even looking
as well
for I'm not looking for
I am.
I'm not.
Email us at feedback@itsgotstartrek.com. Subject line, validation.
I don't give a shit.
And then just write one of our names down. Dan, Jesse, or Patrick.
I don't know how you drew from this that I was looking for your validation. That speaks something about you and what you think people expect from you. You think people look to you to validate them. People look to you to answer their questions.
I think that is very perceptive.
You're something. Oh my, fuck you.
I think you're a very perceptive
Patrick
person.
the Oracle over here. All right.
I was trying to make an Oracle database joke, but it didn't come to me fast enough.
I'll come to you fast enough.
Shit. Okay. Next phase or what? I don't know what we're talking about.
Well, we skipped phase 4.
Well, we don't have to go through all the phases.
Oh, we didn't really skip it. Yeah, we were
talking about phase 5.
Actually, phase 4 was a big one because that was the one. I think that was the one she was there for 6 months. Because one of them she was there for 6 whole months.
She wasn't there for 6 months. They said it was 6 months that she jumped.
She jumped back 6 months, but I think there was one part where she said there was one part where she said that she was for half a year. I know what you're talking about. There was one part that said she jumped back 6 months.
I don't remember well enough. It's possible I might have missed that. Which is the one where Neelix was...
okay, wait.
He was the security officer.
She goes, is there any discernible pattern to these jumps?
It was one of the first ones.
No, they're apparently
that
random.
That upset me. Seeing Neelix in a security officer.
I was offended.
I was thrown off a little bit.
So, okay, wait, there's about the jumping. It said, the doctor said, is there any discernible pattern to these jumps? And she says, no, they're apparently random. One time it seemed to span a few weeks. The last was half a year. Each time I arrived seemed to exist in a temporal.
I interpret that as the jump was half a year versus a few days versus a few weeks.
But there was, yeah, you're right. But there was a specific. There was a specific one where she jumped back 6 months. Yeah, it wasn't clear to me. I wasn't clear on how long she spent in each one. I knew at one point she jumped 6 months, but I was also under the impression that one time she lived there for half a year. But you might be right. I don't know. What were you guys just talking about while I was looking that up? You guys were saying something to each other.
I don't. Did he imagine that, Jesse? I think he imagined that. What do you think, Jesse?
Now you're making me feel crazy. I won't use the word for that. We all know what that is called, though.
What are we talking about?
When you make someone feel crazy, when someone talks and feels crazy by talking to someone.
Oh, gaslighting?
Yeah, I won't say that, though. Because I don't want to overuse that term.
It is good not to overuse that term, although in this case, I think that would have been appropriate. If in fact Jesse and I were pretending to not have said something when we had in fact said something, for the purpose of making you go slightly crazy.
So, right.
Or feel like you were going crazy, and for the additional purpose that we could like inherit your aunt's art or whatever. I forget the exact thing that was
aunt's
going
art?
on. Yeah, the original. Go watch the movie. It's a good movie.
Aunt's art?
No, Gaslight.
Oh, Aunt's art. What were you talking about Aunt's art?
I think that's part of the plot. I could be wrong. I think I may be misreading, but I think the husband, the husband is like trying to find something in like his wife's aunt's like house.
Got it. Yeah.
And I think so. And then he's encouraging his wife to have a mental breakdown because like he wants to get control of your typical dumb bullshit man nonsense. So men are losers.
So phase 4 was actually a big phase. That was Jimbalian fudge. I wonder what Jimbalian fudge is. But they were talking about this.
It's one of those things that mildly aggravates me.
Like shit.
Does it aggravate you because we don't know what it is? Because fudge is fudge. It's like, what is fudge anyway?
What if it has like little bits of yogurt in it?
I don't want to open a can of worms on this because
either it comes from the cacao plant or it doesn't.
I might be a minority opinion here, and I don't think I have enough time to fully explicate my argument here. I tend not to be a fan of the Star Trek foods where it's like, it's this kind of fudge, it's this kind of chicken, it's this kind of whatever. Sometimes it doesn't bother me, like if it's an ale, like Romulan ale doesn't bother me, or some type of chocolate doesn't bother me.
Well, I think
something about that, like it's the Gleeblorpian bonbons.
I think I made this. I think I made this same assertion.
Talaxian spare ribs.
I think I made this same.
It's the alien regular.
I made this same assertion except about animals, like a Zip-Zarpian tiger or something.
Right,
and I think like
this is Klingon Mugu Gai Pan.
Right.
Yeah.
Same. Exactamundo.
This is a Flarpian butterfly.
But you know what I'm saying? Like I'm not going to make a big deal about it. I like it when it's like Ractigino. Ractigino. It kind of sounds like cappuccino.
It's not like a Denebian
but
necktie.
It's not Klingon cappuccino. Like they call it Klingon coffee, but it's got a name. It's Ractigino or Gach. Right? You know what I'm saying? Gach, Makhtar. I that's my preference. My personal preference.
So I don't know if they meant to do this. I'm guessing they might have, or maybe they came up with this after the fact. But this is where they first referenced the Year of Hell, which actually this is season 3, episode 21. The Year of Hell is season 4, episode 8. So
we talked about that in episode 22 of the It's Got Star Trek podcast. It's an early one.
Wow,
so,
episode 22.
So did they already have the idea for Year in Hell in mind when they made this episode?
Yeah. So the quick rundown on Year of Hell, and we did discuss.
They said they lost Janeway, B'Elanna, and Joe Carey. Do we know who is Joe Carey? Is that a familiar name in Voyager? I don't remember.
I was trying to think who that was.
I was like, is it the guy from Stranger Things, the actor from Stranger Things? So
what? I don't get that joke.
You will when you get older.
What's up with you today, man? He's like really like he's like talking down to me today. He's like, Dan, that was the point of the joke, Dan. Dan, what I think you're failing to notice is that was the point of the joke.
I apologize. I am being too patronizing. That's for sure. No, no, the Year of Hell, which we discussed some of the behind the scenes stuff, I think, in the podcast episode where we discussed that, number 22. But as I recall, the Year of Hell, the original concept for the Year of Hell was it was going to be an entire season.
Right.
They figured out pretty early on they weren't going to be able to do that, so they were going to do this 2-parter. It had already been planned at this point, and originally it was going to be they were thinking anyway of having it be what spans the 2 seasons, the season finale and stuff. But then they decided to do the whole Scorpion storyline, which then brings in 7 of 9, and Kes leaves shortly thereafter. I think in the 2nd episode of the 4th season. And so they just pushed back the Year of Hell a few episodes. But there's still some similarities because in this episode, Kes has to go deal with that temporal torpedo to get to the phase
chronotons things or something.
In Year of Hell, it's 7 of 9 who effectively takes her place, and she's there for a different reason. But the same basic idea of like how to stop the Krenim attacks.
So Joe Carey, according to Memory Alpha, says Lieutenant Joe Carey was a 24th century human Starfleet officer. He served as assistant chief engineer on board USS Voyager during its 7-year journey through the Delta Quadrant. He had a wife and 2 sons. He appeared in Parallax, Prime Factors, State of Flux, and Friendship 1. So
all right. I can't put a face with the name.
In the Voyager short story, The Ones Left Behind, Joseph Carey lived with his family in Cobb County, Ireland, on Earth by 20. Okay, I don't know, bunch of shit. So he was someone. Speaking of Kes going into that super torpedo, Neelix was saying you'll be burned to a crisp, but like. She didn't get burned at all. She just passed out. Like, did they run out of money? Her skin should have started. Her skin should have started bubbling or something when she was next to that.
He
torpedo.
kind of just didn't know what he was talking about. I guess,
I think he's
just
she's lucky that she's zapped out of phase. She's zapped out of phase like after she passed out. Like, how'd she know she wasn't going to die? Like, she passed out and immediately zapped away. But she just assumed, it's like she went into that torpedo knowing it was going to kill her, but she just assumed that she was going to zap on a time jump.
Well, she knew it wasn't going to kill her because she, from the future, knew that she survived it, but then had to get cured of the radiation, but then that radiation was reactivated later, causing the whole problem.
So now we're playing by time rules.
Well, that's the thing it's like, all right, that's what they say. I will say this is another example of the problem with this episode, that Kes is there, and there's this temporal torpedo, and the music's all like, nah, 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 and she's looking at her tricorder, and the tricorder is like, doing the number thing where it's all like, I'm figuring out shit, and the music's all like, nah, 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 it's just there wasn't any tension or excitement because we already know what's going to happen, and just because the music's loud and Kes looks worried, there was nothing to engage with in that scene. It was just her looking at a tricorder and waiting until the tricorder got the result. You can do that exact thing, and Star Trek does it often with more tension than they had here. I thought that they could have done a little bit better job there. Wasn't bad, just wasn't stupendous in my view. All right. You want to take another break?
Star Trek stupendous.
You want to take another break?
Okay. Yeah, man.
And when we come back, we'll finish up.
Okay. Yeah.
For real this time?
Wrap it up.
Okay.
Wrap it up.
All right. We will be right back.
Man.
What the hell are you kids watching?
Okay. All right. We're back. We're back for real, though. From the break.
So.
The break that we took, it was a little sort of a respite from the recording. And then we return to the microphones to conclude our comments.
So everyone on the crew now has chronoton radiation, which means nobody will be able to take advantage of the doctor's new biotemporal chamber, which reverses cells. So so this great procedure that the doctor came out that could extend people's lives by indefinitely. None of the people on the Voyager. This is a little bit of lore here.
It's good writing. You build in the thing that it makes the magic thing not work anymore. Otherwise, it would break all the future plots.
Yeah, but but they could theoretically make an episode of Star Trek in the future that was all about the Doctor's temporal chamber thing and extending people's lives. But then all the people on the Voyager would be like, we can't take it because of that one time, and so that would be some kind of. Did they think about?
Well,
that?
they did. Honestly, they did kind of solve that though, because it isn't the way they stopped this whole thing with Kes is that they figured out a way to how to squish those remaining particles out. right? So they could do it. They could cure everyone of that. I
guess so.
And then make everyone live forever.
Yeah.
Although who knows?
This isn't like
it works.
so it doesn't have lasting effects like when they used warp to wear out the space-time continuum like a rug. So you couldn't do so there was a cosmic speed limit.
It's a
imposed by
one-off
Starfleet.
sci-fi story, and it would be nice if this is the one that nobody is going to care about them not going back to.
Yeah.
When I first saw the device, I thought, oh, the Doctor. Why didn't the Doctor just come up with the transporter gimmick? But that was because I was thinking they were like, oh, we'll put her in stasis until we can solve this. But yeah, it was different. They were actually trying to reverse the aging or stabilize the aging, which is an interesting idea. Again, not thoroughly delved into the sort of morals and stuff like that. This episode, and I think there's been a couple other episodes we've discussed in the past where it's like they keep introducing these great ideas, but they don't go into any of them. They're just like, here's a great idea. Here's another great idea. Ooh, isn't that crazy? And it's like, yeah. Can we have like an episode about that where we think about that, right?
Yeah, there was some random bit in this episode, so this is sort of a tangent to what you were saying, where they were where they almost found a cure where they were trying to study Kes, and she was behind in some kind of field, and that's when the Doctor walked back and the field all went zoop, zoop, zoop. You remember that part where like he walked in and went zoop, and you saw this weird static. It was kind of cool.
I like that part.
I like that effect. But
Voyager has good production.
But it was like it was weird. It was weird because like suddenly Kes is like becoming like transparent, and they're like, "Oh, what's going on?"
Back to the Future rules.
Yeah, right.
Shit.
It's like, take a picture. It doesn't mean they didn't take a picture of that spot anymore. It's just they still took the picture. It's just nobody was in the picture.
It's just some lunatic. Some lunatic taking a picture of some bushes.
Yeah, right.
Who was taking the picture? Was it George McFly? Was he a peeping Tom?
So it was that part was kind of weird though when she started turning invisible because it almost seemed like there wasn't any point to that because we didn't learn anything from that. Like they were like
they learned a little because later she says like, oh, if they make an adjustment, it might work.
But
then they don't ever get to do it because that's in the year of hell, and it all kind of works, but I don't know.
Not quite.
Oh, this part when Paris is like, "Let me get one thing straight, Doc." That line. Let me get one thing straight, Doc. And he goes, "Is it possible if this keeps happening to Kes that she might actually jump back into a time before she knew any of us?" It's like, well, yeah, duh. And then the doctor's like,
right.
Worse than that. It's possible she may eventually jump back in a time before she even existed. It's like, of course that's possible. Why they made a little bit too much of a dramatic pause.
I think that might be part of also what aggravated me in this episode is they repeatedly stating the obvious.
Right.
And it's like, okay, I understand you maybe want to do that in some form or fashion, but Voyager occasionally would have this tendency of being like, here's the deal, you dumb people in the audience. And that's unfair because most people watching Voyager are like super bright, highly intelligent people. You didn't need to dumb it down for us, right? I don't think so. Not that much anyway.
Not that much. Not that much.
It just sounds silly when you're watching people who are portrayed and you can buy into the fact that these are super genius, highly competent, highly qualified people. When they say or do things that seem not to match their stated competency, that gets a little confusing. It's like in the horror movie when somebody does something silly, you just don't buy into it.
Or there's always some kind of thing where they're explaining like time paradoxes, and it's like they're explaining it to like a first officer or something. It's like we all went to the same Starfleet time classes.
Yeah.
But see, when Geordi does it in whatchamacallit,
Geordi
in Loop Patrol,
in the Loop Patrol episode. In Star Trek TNG, Loop Patrol. It works because it's brief and it explains the time loop thing. And yes, it's exposition.
Time comes a loop.
But part of that is also the presentation and the performance, just all the characters asking the questions they're asking and stuff like that. It's pretty cool. Now, there's plenty of silly stuff in that time travel type episode too. But the trick is people will ignore the problems with the time travel gimmick if there's some, first of all, purpose to the time travel, and if it's sort of just presented and organized well, right? Like in the Times Arrow 2-parter, They go back in time because they find Data's head in a cave.
Did we do that one?
We haven't done that one.
Oh.
We should. Hopefully, the algorithm will let us do that one at some point.
Hopefully it'll let us because we have no choice.
'Cause that's a great episode. But so Data's head is found in a cave under San Francisco.
And it looks all creepy.
Cave in San Francisco.
And they're like, this has been here for like 500 years. You're like, what?
What the fuck?
And then what? They travel back in time because it finds out aliens are stealing human souls from back in time. So that works. Star Trek 4, you got to go back in time to get a whale. It's like, okay, we need a whale. Where are we going to get one? Back in time. It's the only place. It's like that we have a reason to go back in time.
When are they going to go meet?
Flying around the
We're on
sun?
a
Who
whale
cares?
of a
Like
mission.
how the time travel actually works because it's like we've got to go back in time to get a whale.
We've got a whale of a job to do.
They should go back and meet some dinosaurs sometime.
Yeah.
Yeah,
maybe
Star Trek
Maybe Discovery can do that.
Star Trek doesn't do enough. They have a couple dinosaur things here and there. They should bring back TAS, the animated series, using the same format. I think they should literally dig up some of the writers and reanimate them using genetics science. But we need more stories. We need more TAS style stories.
But we can just reuse the old animation like bits they have from their filmation.
Well, yes, of course.
Like those little.
You just
recycle those.
You only have to draw a couple new pictures,
Yeah.
like the dinosaur or whatever. Because I'm saying you can have a dinosaur story.
And you can still use you can still use William Shatner.
It's a great show. I get upset. Okay, there's a little sidebar here, folks in the audience. All of you listening because you're like, I like Voyager. I'll listen to these folks prattle on about Voyager a little bit. And we like Voyager quite a bit too. So, our disappointment in this episode is just that. It's a minor disappointment. I think we're all pretty much in the same boat that we enjoyed this episode. There's a lot to like in this episode. It's just, it doesn't blow your mind off. When we're watching things like Year of Hell or Future's End or Tinker Tailor Dr. Spy or Blink of an Eye, these are all episodes we've done podcasts on.
We have.
And those are all, there's a lot to
What
go.
was the one where they went back into the 50s sci-fi movie one with Paris?
Oh yeah, that was the Doctor Zhivago. Star Trek Voyager Dr. Zhivago.
Demento J. Zhivago.
Yeah, the problem is that we have mental derangement.
It was Bride of
Chaotica.
Bride of Chuckanomia.
Well, anyway, so
Yeah, Bride of Chaotica, right.
we dig on this Voyager stuff. The disappointment is just a minor disappointment because I think there's a lot of great stuff in this episode that you think they could have done a little bit better.
That Chronoton torpedo, was that just like, was that like an unblown torpedo or was it just
Unblown.
Why was there unblown torpedo? No, that was an appropriate response.
An undetonated torpedo.
Yeah, why didn't it blow it up yet?
That just happens, man.
Sometimes you got to dud.
Was it? They said it was a piece of it or something, a piece of duddy. I like that. I like when they have the doors, the special door openers, the suction cups they put on the doors, and they go and it makes the doors open. They should make those Jeffrey tubes taller, like
Jeffrey tubes.
They should turn them into like Jeffrey walks or something, walkways. Jeffrey.
That would defeat the purpose. They would
Paths.
just be corridors.
Corridors,
Jeffrey
yeah, but why do
Jeffrey's
they
corridor.
why do they make them tubular? Why do they make them so hard to get through?
Because you already have the corridors for the people to walk through, and these are just the connecting bits.
These are the guys with the yellow shirts.
But they're the connecting bits because they're basically consoles. Like
they're there.
There's some stuff back in there.
Aren't they there so you can go back in there to basically fix shit? Isn't that why they're there?
Yeah, but you're getting at the guts of stuff as opposed to like the your main consoles and stuff are on the wall.
But it's like the guts.
Corridor.
But yeah, it's like the guts. It's like when something crucial breaks, you got to go back.
Some like isolinear rods.
Yeah. So why do they? My point is
strips.
But my point is why do they have to be tubes? Why can't they just be taller? Why do they need to be so hard to access?
I think it's a space concern. I always assume that. I mean, I don't want to challenge you.
I mean, they are in outer space, so yes,
I just honestly hadn't considered it.
Everything is a space concern when you're in outer space because it's space.
I'm unclear.
Oh, you meant literally space, like they don't have enough space?
I'm just unclear on the alternative you're proposing. Like, is it just the ships would just be like wide open?
No, they would just have corridors you could walk through instead of tubes.
Yeah, but they already have corridors. You want extra corridors?
Yeah, why do they have to make them tubes? I'm
assuming because there's not enough space to put a corridor. Maybe
Those are just maintenance crawl
There's
spaces.
like a room on the other side, or a corridor, or astrometrics, or you got your cetacean ops, and they're doing some navigations and shit down in there. There's a bunch of water. You might have some lava whales that live in lava.
Yeah,
What if you have
they got the lava
What if
room.
you have bad knees?
What?
What if you have bad knees?
Well,
They give you one of them hover things.
they don't. Yeah, you're not. You're probably not in that division.
You get like a hover hammock. It's like those hammocks you get in North Carolina. Those hammock chairs, except the hover model. It hovers. You know, because that
Like a
technology is
rascal.
real. You know about.
I just
you know, in Back to the Future 2, they invented it.
They've
invented
They've been
hoverboards.
keeping it down.
Yeah, but the skateboard lobby like wouldn't let them. Wouldn't let them release
Right. It was the skateboard lobby.
Or it was a Mothers Against Hoverboards.
Oh, right. I
A
remember that.
subdivision
Mothers
of,
against
of
hover.
Mothers Against Drunk Driving. Mothers Against Sober Hoverboarding. All right. All right. I've done my bit. What's the next bit?
When the when the doctor was when they were in phase 8, which was the random time, when he got his old haircut, and she tells them that's after
Like when he's bald.
yeah when he has his old haircut, yeah
His old haircut.
his old haircut. When she tells him the variance, and he doesn't even know that he's supposed to know that yet, she just does the variance, and then they go to the conference room, and he's all walking around, and he's all like talking about when I attempt an experimental and might I add ingenious procedure to extend her lifespan. Yeah. When he's walking around, he's pretending to work out what's going on, but really he's just thinking about what a smarty pants he is for inventing the temporal chamber.
Yeah.
If you watch that scene, he's like he looks like he's all contemplative. It's like, how do we solve this problem? But really he's just like, I'm so smart. I'm so smart. He was extra Dr. Smart Pricky this episode.
Well, it's another aspect that, again, doesn't go terribly deeply interrogated, is this idea of being told that you've invented something that you have not yet invented and how that might impact the future of you inventing the thing. Does it make you more confident to invent the thing? Does it prevent you from inventing it in some weird way?
But see, this is a special scenario though, because when he invents
It's like the flux capacitor.
because when
Exactly.
when he invents it in the future,
It's what makes time travel possible.
no, but the thing is like in Kess's past, their future, Kess remembers her past, but they don't remember their past. So when the Doctor actually invents it in Kess's timeline, he doesn't remember that he invented it. He doesn't learn until his past that he invents it.
It's definitely one way to interpret it. It's just funny because they don't really go into it. It's kind of an interesting idea.
Yeah, they don't go into it. They don't say at the end of the episode, they're not like, Kess, you started acting really weird like 4 years ago, started telling me about this biotemporal chamber I had to invent. They're like, biotemporal chamber? I just came up with this second. You know?
Arguably, it's because that hadn't happened yet, and then it hadn't filtered through the timeline. But on the other hand, they do make a comment that's sort of similar when Kess is talking to Tom Paris shortly after B'Elanna dies on the bridge.
Yeah.
Tom Paris is forced to pilot the ship with the corpse of his lover just mere feet away.
Yeah, bummer.
And after that, after they resolve all that, Kess is sitting there in sickbay talking to him, and she's saying, like, don't worry, I know it doesn't feel like it, but you're going to feel better one day. And he's like, I'd like to believe you, but you're full of shit. I'm going to feel miserable forever. And she's like, no, I know, for real. And, the implication is the implication right there is Kess is saying, I have seen this in the future. That future is at least possible. It doesn't mean it's going to happen. Things may be altered, but the fact is, she has seen an example of him living a happy life.
Yeah.
So the same could be true about the Doctor inventing the coffin treatment machine, the super boring treatment machine, where everyone stands around and the music's all like, and they're just doing nothing.
She was in like her own little fever dream time world that only applied to her, because they were talking about how the way they were going to fix it is they were going to flood her with anti-chronotons at the same frequency, and that'll somehow purge all the bullshit. Now I was wondering if it's like because they were talking about how it was purge it. I thought it would be more along the lines of like noise canceling headphones, where it's like you take the sound wave and then you put the opposite sound wave or whatever, and then they cancel each other out.
Probably doesn't work for particles.
But she was saying it purges her systems from it, and it didn't really make sense to bring back at the end how when she was before she was born, like when she went backwards to before she was born, she popped back into existence when she was born. So she jumped into that point, and then she jumped back to herself in the bed. She didn't live her full life up to that point. She just jumped straight back into the bed and woke up. And
that's
so
just what we see.
I think we're meant to believe that sort of both simultaneously.
See, that's
she
what,
lives her life, but then
see, that's what it's not
conveniently
clear. It's not what
at
clear
the
about.
contemporaneous time in Voyager is when they arrest this business.
Okay, so in the inner light, it's very obvious that Picard lived a fucking life, and that's what makes part of what makes it so powerful. This one, it's totally not clear what goes on.
That's a significantly better episode.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
as it happens.
Right.
Here, the other thing that undercuts this episode again is outside of the framework of the episode, and I think it's important to factor in that this may be impacting certainly my view of the episode. Is, as I mentioned before, we know Kes is about to leave, and not only is she about to leave the show, right? Like the character is going to be gone. The implications of that are that she's not going to get, like in this episode, their whole point is we've solved the problem so that in the future, when you do reach your melangial, your melangial state, haberdashery,
general haberdashery.
When you reach the state of Ocampan decomposition,
Ocampan decomposite.
I'm the one who just accidentally coined the phrase, so I give it a try. Ocampan decomposition.
Okay.
Ocampan decomposition.
I'm sorry I tried to take that from you.
I enjoyed the
What
attempts.
color do you think they turn?
What are you talking about when they die?
Turn into like get all purple.
I've never wondered that. That's a good.
Hey, you
now
know why,
I'm wondering
Dan? Because you're not a fucking serial killer.
what color do I want to see people die because I want to know what color they turn.
What color do the Ocampans turn?
I don't care about anything else other than the color that they turn after they die.
I mean, I can't even remember what I was. Oh yeah, I was just basically saying that the problem was initiated when she was near death. From her natural life cycle, the doctor tries to initiate this solution to it because of the chronoton particle business in her blood. It caused her to go back and forth through time. In order to resolve that, they expunged all those remaining particles that were dormant and figured out a way to do that, which in theory, both stopped her bouncing around through time. Okay. We don't know exactly what her future is going to be yet at this stage if we're just watching this episode, but presumably,
I know what happens.
Presumably, when they've set it up now, they've created a reason to say, hey, when it gets time for Kes in season 6 or so, when she's supposed to be dying, maybe it's later than that. But the idea is that they've now created a scenario where, hey, we can keep this character around. We set this character up to be short-lived, but actually we can keep her around beyond the 7 seasons or whatever if we wanted to. But then she doesn't get to stay around. The character is removed from the show in a different way. And so none of that future happens. It's a totally different future that ends up happening. So I think that undercuts it a little because one of the cool things about this episode is that it incorporates the Year of Hell before the Year of Hell. And the Year of Hell truly is one of the classic episodes of Voyager. So that's awesome. But it's undermined again by the fact that none of the other stuff is going to happen because Kes is gone.
Kes is gone.
Got
I don't know.
replaced by 7 of 9.
Basically.
So when she was in the chamber and her body temperature was going down, apparently her normal body temperature is 16.3 degrees. Now I'm assuming that's Celsius.
Yes.
But even still, that's 61.34 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
So Ocampans
still not that much.
Ocampans live it cold.
Celsius is not metric. Did you know that?
I didn't say that.
No.
It was.
It's just a little factoid.
No,
a
it's
little
not
fact, a little tidbit.
It's not metric. It is based around.
If it was
zero
metric, it would
freezing.
make more sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know
there's
how you could
there's
make
no
it,
metric temperature.
I don't think temperature works like that.
It kind of doesn't.
Yeah.
So it's a tricky thing to measure.
Not
But
even
I prefer to
Kelvin.
measure in Kelvin.
Celsius is often associated
Kelvin
with
just
metric,
looks
but
cool.
I'm just saying I'm a pro metric person, but I'm also I'm pro Fahrenheit because it has higher resolution.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I get a
Makes
little
more sense.
aggravated when I'm dealing with Celsius when I'm traveling around and anywhere in the rest of the world that uses Celsius.
Yeah.
I can figure it out in my head, but it's like there's a big difference between like 70 and 75 degrees or something, but not as much, it doesn't feel as much when it's like, oh, I was like 18 degrees.
Well, the difference, it's like the difference between 18 and 11 is
a lot.
Is a lot. And
versus.
And the difference between 30 and 40 is like not that much.
Yeah. Anyway. I know,
but it is kind of arbitrary to have 32 as as a freezing point, but whatever.
Yeah, but it's also arbitrary to have like the 0 as a freezing point.
I mean,
because it's only the freezing point of water.
It's
water biased.
Well, right,
not the freezing point of alcohol, carbon dioxide.
There's a good reason
nitrogen.
there's a good reason to be water biased. It's just, I mean,
because that's ice, baby.
I mean, we set density, we set the density of 1 equal to water as well. So we do a lot of things based around water,
which is again, but it just removes it a little bit from the metriciness. Again, it's not a metric thing as a result.
Did you say Wawa?
Wawa water. So Kes is 3 years, 2 months. That's what we
at one point
during this episode.
Yes, this is season 3. She was 2 years old when she came aboard the Voyager, if I recall correctly. Certainly close to that.
So that's sketch, man.
So I guess we've experienced a year and a half, if they're being consistent in their year bones.
Year of
year
hell.
bones.
Year bones. All right. Anything else? Any odds and ends? Any glibs or globs?
The last line was really fucking weird. When she was like, if there's one thing that this experience has taught me, Captain, it's that there's no time like the present. Like they made her like leave the party and do this really uncomfortable exit from the party just for a gag, just for a joke. Like, jokes are one thing.
I think this is the beginning of her like mental deterioration.
Yeah, right. Because making a joke is one thing, but it's like we're gonna have Kes abruptly leave the party for no reason, just to give a one-liner. And then Janeway...
And it's a one-liner that you could interpret as she's having a real mental difficulty readjusting to her life after this severely traumatic event, and she can't be around people, and that's a problem, and it's going untreated because nobody recognizes it, and the doctor's like laughing at her.
And Janeway gives her a classic Janeway, sort of like a very exaggerated Janeway, just like, I can't believe it.
That's probably where the studio came in and said, like, you gotta add this line at the end. It would be funny if you add this line.
We want to see Janeway throw her hands up.
We knew at the beginning of the Year of Hell, by the way, we knew it was a real party because there were steel drums at that beach party.
That whole like holodeck, that holodeck.
That was dumb. I don't like that one.
It looks so fucking lame. I don't like that holodeck.
Yeah,
and Voyager's got some good holodeck.
That's their worst holodeck.
Fairhaven's cool, and
even that silly little bar with the pool tables is perfecly fine compared to this other one.
The Chaotica stuff is awesome.
Chaotica's cool. Yeah.
This bizarre resort that it's a holodeck, but there's no sign of like the ocean or water.
Right, it's just some miserable looking wall.
It doesn't even look like it's outside. It looks like it's like in the mezzanine of a condo complex.
Right.
It's like all covered up. There's no motion, no air motion going through. You could sense it was just a still, stuffy place. Not a fan. I am a fan of the fact that Harry, in one of these time frames, like earlier on in the episode, it does appear that he was promoted to lieutenant. So we saw Chakotay was
cool, yeah.
Chakotay promoted to captain, Tuvok promoted to first officer.
Of course.
And
he
commander.
should be captain. Tuvok should have been captain.
I agree.
That's some Maquis pirate.
Tuvok
bastard.
doesn't manhandle the children.
Yeah, for real, dude.
But yes, so Harry was promoted to lieutenant, which is a rare thing in Voyager lore and history, even in alternate timelines.
It's a rare thing in Harry Kim history.
Oh, yeah. Speaking of Kim, this line where Linus, by the way, Linus was very reasonable. She was the most reasonable one when she was like saying, "We're not talking about a tested medical procedure here. We're talking about a radical experiment." Where Linus was against extending her mom's Kess's life because she was like, "This is a ridiculous experiment," and it's just she said she didn't want to have her life extended. Blah blah blah. And then Harry
Don't
Kim,
be ridiculous.
And this is like the line that just one other line that just didn't work for me. Kim was like, "Sweetheart, I understand how upsetting this is, but if it were you on that bio bed, I'd feel just like Tom does." It's just like another one of these sort of like something about the way he said,
"There was no point in
"Sweetheart."
saying that.
Yeah, it's just the
It was a misogynistic and controlling and patronizing and not cool.
It just wasn't.
Not
Nothing was
cool.
Not cool, Harry Kim.
Yeah.
Not cool.
well, you may have lost your memories, but you certainly haven't lost your determination. This is none of the lines played by decent actors. None of them were believable.
It's a little, I don't know. You almost feel like something was going on the set or something.
Yeah, like they were all pissed about something. I don't know.
Now,
Maybe something got into their food and it messed them all up.
yeah, no, I mean, Tom Paris, his portrayal by Robert Duncan McNeil is great, and he does a great job. He does what he can, and they give him some good lines. I think he's doing a very good job in this episode. And of course, Kate Mulgrew is always great as Janeway.
She gives I've mentioned before about how her I always comment on people's facial expressions because I like people with good facial expressions, but hers are always so we're extra exaggerated in this episode. Like especially at the last line when she's like, oh, Cass,
Cass. Hey, they should have you voice her on the Star Trek Prodigy.
Yeah, instead of her.
Yeah, they should fire Kate Mulgrew and hire you, Dan.
Chicote.
That's great. You sound just like Kate Mulgrew.
Another thing that I admit is totally unfair, but I think that maybe a strike against this episode, a small strike against this episode in my book, is the minimal involvement of Janeway, right? And I don't know. Something about the idea of Chakotay as captain skeeves me.
Yeah,
out.
man.
I don't like
I'm
seeing
not
that.
cool with that at all.
I want Janeway to be the captain. I don't want her to be dead because of some console explodes.
Well,
you see,
she's not even sitting by a console.
Yes,
Fishy.
Okay, well, first, so you see how Chakotay handles his leadership position. He's grabbing children and throwing them around.
Yelling at people. He tells Tom Paris, he's like, Tom, I'm going to need you to pilot the ship.
Yeah.
Ignore the corpse of your lover.
Slow down, dude.
Right. And then as far as the console explosion, they've gotten so bad, we have 3 people killed in one console explosion.
Yeah.
These consoles should not be exploding like this. They need a fuse.
It's a problem.
Yeah.
It's a perennial issue.
You shouldn't explode from a console. That's not how consoles work.
Yeah, I know.
All right.
But I know this isn't. But I know this
Get
is
some
like
fucking
this is a
fuses,
lame.
jeez.
This is a lame thing for me to complain about because this is like the
You don't need fuses in the future.
This is the
bullshit.
this is the ongoing sort of Star Trek joke. It's like, why did the
But
consoles explode? I understand.
Here's the deal, though.
There's no point.
Here's the deal. You don't complain about it when it makes sense in the storyline or when it's like when it doesn't seem a little ridiculous. Like, I don't know. It's just like this seemed like too pat of a death. And you could honestly make a quite seriously interesting argument about, no, actually this works better because it's the bleakness of space and people die in non-heroic deaths all the time, blah, blah, blah. Okay, yes, you could do that. I don't think that's what they were going for. I think they were going for, we have 2 minutes to kill Janeway and B'Elanna. We need to, why not kill them both at the same time?
Right. And Joe Carey.
And yes, and have them just, all
did
blown
Joe-
up like that.
Joke here.
Did Joe Carey die? And that's actually
I
maybe
don't
he died
know
in
if
another
he might have
scene.
died in another. It's irrelevant. All right, anything
It's
else?
It's too pat.
Anything else?
That scene was too pat, but Jesse's butt is way pert.
Oh.
You have a pert butt, Jesse.
That statement was too Dan.
That was too Dan.
That was too Dan of a statement.
too Dan for you.
All right, I think that does it for us. For real, though, this time.
For real.
Too legit to quit.
For this week.
Too unlimited.
Next week.
Remember Too Unlimited, the 90s techno,
No.
they play at sporting events. It's like dun, 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 dun. Don't they do that song? It's like, all ready for this. Dun, 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 dun.
Oh, is that those folks?
Is that Too Unlimited?
Too legit to quit.
No, that's Hammer. Are you ready for this?
All right. While Dan is looking that up, I will
Please, Hammer,
go
don't
through
hurt
the
them.
whole back matter business of wishing you all well this week, letting you know
Yeah, it's
that
Too Unlimited. Get ready for this. It's Too Unlimited.
the algorithm will be employed. And as a reminder, the algorithm will ingest this episode that you're listening to right now.
and then it'll poop it out.
And it'll do an analysis on the episode digitally and then compare it to all the Star Trek scripts and select ranked ordered list of what we should be discussing next using some sort of very opaque proprietary algorithm that Dan has developed and is tweaking
Sounds
along
like
the way.
alchemy.
Now, what we can say with a high
Numerical
degree
alchemy.
of confidence is that it will probably be an episode of Star Trek Enterprise. That's the one with Captain Archer, T'Pol, Reed,
If he doesn't get an Enterprise episode, he has to start over.
Charles Trip Tucker III,
Captain?
all sorts of good stuff in there. We love talking about Enterprise. We've done a bunch already. You can check our website, www.itsgotstartrek.com. And if you look at the little menu, you can sort by specific series, or if you want to catch up on some of our thoughts on some other Enterprise episodes, feel free to do so. But yes, we'll probably be doing an Enterprise episode next week based off of the special super duper algorithm. All right. So that all being said, you already know where to find us on Twitter, etc. And It's Got Star Trek. Do not forget, you can find us on YouTube. And YouTube is a good place to find us. Go ahead and subscribe. Why the hell not? You all use YouTube. I know it for a fact. And I know that it's very easy to subscribe to these things. And that
Clickety-click.
You can subscribe to things that you never, ever look at. I do that. I'm subscribed to all sorts of people, motherfuckers, where I'm like, I'm not going to watch that. But I'm still subscribed to them, partly out of kindness, partly out of loyalty, mostly out of laziness. But that's so go ahead.
Look at my collection of all these neat subscriptions.
Yeah,
it's like
if we
instead
can
of
get you
books
to-
on a shelf, it's subscriptions in
It's
your
one of those
YouTube.
deals. If we can get you to click that button, you're unlikely to unclick it later. So go click that button,
baby.
But otherwise, we hope you have a wonderful week, and we will speak to you next week.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
So, I'm going to become a security officer. How about that?
Fortunately, Mr. Neelix, what Cass has been describing is merely one possible future. On each occasion that she jumped to a previous time, her subsequent actions most likely altered the future from that moment on.
Good point, Tuvok. Maybe I'll turn out to be chief security officer.